Hello and happy Wednesday, everyone. We thought today, after many of us watched the US presidential debates, today we talk sports and we talk about a way to unify us. And I'm going to try to do my best, Chris Wallace, moderator duty. And on behalf of Genesco Sports Entertainment, the Harris Poll, and Stagwell, I want to welcome everyone to this webinar. This is one in a series of webinars on a variety of topics. And today, our topic is why sports matter now more than ever. We've gone through several months of COVID, and we really want to talk about what do the data say, what are the sentiments and the attitudes about sports, and very importantly, what does the future hold? So I am thrilled to be joined by three terrific panelists today who are going to share their great wisdom. First, John Tatum, who's the president and CEO of Genesco Sports Enterprise. Welcome, John. Jay Leveton, the partner at the Stagwell Group, and Marissa Solis from Frito, Senior Vice President of Core Brands, Media, Sports, and Partnership. I'm going to hand over to each of them to talk a little bit about themselves. The kind of flow for today's webinar, we're going to ground everyone in a bit of research. I'm going to give everyone a data-based approach, and then we're going to have a spirited conversation for the next hour. So maybe, John, if you can tell us about yourself, your background, and your love of sports.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, Ray. And in terms of the debate, I thought that was a sporting event. I thought it was a sporting event last night. So I think the UFC needs to figure out if they can restage the next one. But it's great to be with you, and obviously great to be with my amazing Frito client, Marissa, and also Jay, great partner at the Stagwell Group, and an amazing group of agency partners that Jay has put together as part of Stagwell. So real quickly, my background is in the sports marketing or sports and entertainment marketing business, sponsorship business. I've been doing this for a little over 32 years. Started out on the, let's say, the sales side, representing professional athletes and celebrities looking for endorsements, to selling sponsorships, to, I would say on the sales side of the transaction. I went to a promotional advertising agency, Tracy Locke, in 1992. They were part of Omnicom to create their internal sports consulting division. My partner and I at Tracy Locke left in 1994 it was a very amicable split with Tracy Locke, by the way. They were our first client. And we started Genesco in 1994, really to focus on the buy side of the transaction. So we don't represent talent, properties in terms of the sales side. We're only on the buy side of the transaction, representing the greatest brands in the world, and we enjoy helping our corporate clients build their brands through these associations and partnerships. But inevitably, it's all about selling. It's about selling salty snacks. It's about selling beer, soft drinks, airline tickets, T-Mobile, phone subscriptions, et cetera. So glad to be with you all, and look forward to our conversation today.
Honored to have you, John, and thank you so much for your partnership. Jay, tell us a little bit about you and your background.
Great. Thanks, Ray, and welcome, everyone. Pleased to have you all on today. I'm Jay Leveton, partner here at the Stagwell Group, a consortium of marketing agencies rooted and grounded in the digital world. My background is in market research, which I'll walk you through some data, give you a sense of kind of where America is and where sports fits in the COVID world, and the key critical role it actually does play. And I think we'll have a good chance to walk you through it. So I've spent 20 years doing market research, qualitative and quantitative, in a lot of different sectors, in corporate America, in politics, and also have had the great opportunity to work in sports as well. It's an exciting and rewarding field, which I'm sure Marissa and John can obviously tell you in great detail, given the wide swath of experience they've had also in marketing and working with leagues and working with teams and the critical role they play in society. So I'll turn it over to Marissa, but I'll jump up next after that to kind of dive through the research.
Thanks, Jay, and thanks. It's good to see you, John, and thank you so much for having me here. As Ray said, Marissa Solis, I'm the SVP of Brands, Media, and Sports Partnerships at Frito North America. And gosh, the last 25 years, I've been dedicated to the CPG industry, selling lots of great products. The last 18 of those years at PepsiCo. Just really exciting, building some exciting brands. I will tell you, I'm an avid sports fan. If I could share some of my teams, definitely Hook 'em Horns, Dallas Cowboys, but the real sport for me is football, and I mean the real football. So FC Barcelona is my team, and in 2022, knock on wood, all things good, I will be headed to my 9th World Cup in Qatar. So definitely avid sports fan and just happy to be here to talk about sports.
Well, we're great to have you here. And my background, Ray Day, again, the vice chair of Stagwell. And before I joined Stagwell, I was with Ford Motor Company for 28 years, 10 years as the chief communications officer, where sports really mattered, particularly to sell the great F-Series pickups. And then I also was the chief communications officer at IBM, where sports also was a big part of the selling proposition. And I joined Stagwell. One of the key reasons I joined Stagwell earlier this year was grounded in digital and grounded in research. And I think that's a good segue, Jay, over to you to talk about, when we talk about sports, let's first look at the data. And I know you and the Harris poll have some interesting data to share.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll get some of these, we'll get the slides up. But I think in terms of looking through this, I think we have been tracking since day one. As you can see on this slide, we've been tracking since day one, really the very beginning when COVID really started. And I think it's been interesting to watch America kind of respond and react to the pandemic in real time. And I think what's really important to understand the psyche of America is I think we still have, it started early on in March, but we can see we've really, as we got into early April, we still have almost a majority of people really today really fearful. And there's a lot of fear out there, and there's a lot of concern, and there's a lot of anxiety out there. You have a majority of people really just saying that they fear they could die as a result of contracting coronavirus. And I think that's been fairly consistent throughout the board here. You can see once it reached 56% in late March, it's been relatively unchanged. And I think there's a lot of anxiety. And I think what you saw also in the debate last night, there was a lot of, anxiety and a lot of back and forth. It's a very challenging time. And I think the absence of normality and the absence of things like sports and other things like that have really just been sort of a fear ingredient around this. But there's a real concern around just their overall personal safety and health. So I really wanted to start there as we think about sports in particular. Go further. Let's go to the next slide. I think what are people really missing today? America, in short, they just want their life back. Most importantly, they want to see their friends and family. They want to go down to the bar and have a drink. They want to go to family birthday parties, and they want to go to social gatherings. And then really at the next level down, they really want to go to a sports game. They want to be able to go to a movie theater or go to a concert. And so, I think it's really important that as we think through this is there are levels of normality that people really miss. And, the number one really being a chance just to be with other people. I think people are lonely and people are having some anxiety. And the next group down really is this idea of, I really want to do things that are, part of my normal routine, going to a movie on the weekend or going to a sporting match on the weekend. And so, that's really, in short, America wants their life back, and sports is a part of that in a big way. Go to the next slide. And then what we also saw was that there has been what we call, in some ways, revenge spending. There was in the beginning in early March, there was a huge dampening of spending as we saw in the economy. Obviously, the economy contracted greatly in Q2 and has been accelerating. And I think a lot of what you're seeing is People really are chomping at the bit to go on vacation. They really want to buy clothes. And it went down to 12% of people were planning to do a plan of going to a concert or a sporting event. And once things have returned to normal, that number has doubled almost up to 21%. So there is an anxiety and a desire and a wish to want to go to a sporting event. It's not at the same level as wanting to go on vacation. I think there's a wider group of people who want to go on a proper vacation. They want to go to buy some new clothes or just upgrade their household with an appliance. But there still is a growing desire to go to a concert or go to a sporting event. As I said, to this desire to be, quote, normal. Let's go to the next slide. And then I think, and as we think through it, I think, once the government says it's okay, or we have a vaccine, or we have real treatments, that people feel less scared, and that's, and that normality that comes from the government or from the medical industry, there's a desire here in the first immediate 1 to 30 days is to go to the office, but there's also an immediate desire to go out to dinner. People are tired of eating at home, and I think as you look down the road, the lower down on that scale is if you keep following the blue line of immediate things that they want to do in 1 to 30 days, going to a large social gathering, visiting casino, going to a sporting event, that's just going to take some time. And that could take up to 6 months to do it in person. And I think how teams and how leagues think through the protocols and the processes to get people through the gates and into stands is really going to take some messaging. It's going to take a lot of real actions, and we'll walk through that in a couple more slides. But this is not going to be an immediate rush back. I think the restaurant industry, which has really struggled in the latest, coming out of this, you'll see a quicker snapback, but you will not see as quick of a snapback for the sporting events or for flying on a plane, or the cruise industry, which really obviously is just shut down at this point. Go to the next slide. And then we asked people, on an open-ended basis, and we wanted to give you kind of a word cloud here. How did you feel when there were no sports? And you said frustrated, alone, disheartened. People were bummed out. And so what we have seen, and I'll show you in a slide in a couple down the road on the deck, but there has not been this massive upsurge in viewing. I think the NFL may be down slightly, and some of the other ones may be up or bounce around. But it's not even so much about this desire to watch it or even to go see it, or there's a mass rush to watch on TV. There's just a desire to have it in the background, to be able to watch clips of it, to be able to read it about it online or in the newspaper, see highlights. The fact that it wasn't there was just another sense of that normalcy had been taken away from America. Let's go to the next slide. And then when it came back, and this is all Americans, even non-fans as well, eager to get back at it, felt very good, excited, engaged, encouraged. So I think, I think you can see here that was a big cultural change for people to be able to see it coming back in particular. Go to the next slide. And then if you look at it with particularly just with people who self-identified as fans, 77% of fans agreed with that. They were glad MLB, NHL, NBA, had returned to play even with no fans in the stands at 77%. So fans overall were quite excited, and even had, for people who aren't sports fans, you had a quarter of people who were excited about it, even though they necessarily may not be tuning in or watching or following their favorite team as well. Go on to the next slide. And as I said, there hasn't been a massive change in, have you been watching more or less of the same amount of the following sports today? NBA, 15% have said they were watching more of it, 12% said less, 20% said the same, and you had a majority of people who said they weren't watching it. So it's not like a massive change on viewing. I think if anything, you're going to see people looking for different ways to engage. And so watching TV is nice, and getting it back and being able to see it is interesting. There has not been a massive change in viewership. And I think that's obviously what you've seen in the NFL in the last couple of weeks. Some games are up, some games are down. Obviously, there's a greater desire to watch the Ravens play the Chiefs than maybe to watch the Jets, the Broncos later this week. But I think there is some people who are excited and watching it and watching more, and that's sort of been offset by people who may be distracted with other things, or helping kids do Zoom homework or something along that line. And I think there hasn't, as I said, not been a huge change from a viewership point of view. Go to the next slide. And then you can see here as well, have you been following or watching any new sports? It's 18%. Not a huge amount. A third of those people said they were watching NBA. So if you say a third of 18, maybe it's 5 or 6% of Americans were watching more, depending on the game. So again, as I said, in particular, just a reinforcement, it's not like a majority are watching, more in different types of sports. It's been a subset of people, a smaller subset of people. Go to the next slide. And then I think, to get fans to return to venues, we asked people, what are they interested in terms of how concerned were they? They were generally, pretty concerned to be exposed to people that weren't in their family circle or in their pod nowadays. When you ask America to ask for solutions on really intractable problems like a pandemic, they're interested in all of it. So as a sports team or a league, or anybody trying to get people to a space, a true public space with people that they are around for short periods of time, that they're not ongoing relationships with, they want sanitation stations, they want temperature checks, they want face mask requirements, they want reusable seat covers. And I think, in the next slide, we'll set this up a little bit more, but for the first time I've seen, there's really just actually a strong interest in contactless, what we're saying, contactless augmented reality experiences. So to be able to do something, to the extent that shopping, we haven't gone to the grocery store and we're shopping online, to the extent that we can't go to the stadium and we can do this, have a more augmented, more reality-like experience of the stadium in our home, there's a real yearning for that. And so I think obviously people really want cleanliness, they want sanitation, they want face masks, they want distance seating. The next chart on the next slide really shows a desire to really engage with technology, and to really to be able to augment the home watching experience. And I think the future for sports and the future for teams that are trying to get people to maybe engage with the team, and maybe, even if you filled all of your stadiums at Cowboy Stadium, that's 80,000 people, but there's still hundreds of thousands of people and millions of people at home that still want to be able to have home watch parties, are interested in virtual reality viewing. They're interested in behind the scenes content, and they want to be able to chance to have social media integrations and chance to submit cheers and positive things. And so I think to the extent that you can give them those opportunities now, they're truly looking for an outlet. To be able to show spirit and to show that they support the team, and in the particular for people who go to the stadium, they're looking for real actions to feel safe. And for the people who may not, who are still 6 months to 12 months away from feeling comfortable to go, maybe even post a vaccine, they're looking for outlets, they're looking for party opportunities, they're looking for social media integration. And I think the opportunity with younger people to put technology in their hand, or people who are comfortable, slightly older, they're more comfortable with technology, here's a real opportunity here. And I know Marissa will talk a little bit more about the type of fan engagement that she's been doing. Go to the next slide. And just to finish this off, obviously a lot of leagues and teams and athletes are grappling with social justice issues and racial equality. And I think, while non-fans are, clearly fairly polarized around social issues, racial equality, the fans are more comfortable with it. They're comfortable with the league. They're comfortable with the content they get. They're comfortable with the athletes that they follow. They're really interested in kind of what they are thinking as human beings and things that they have experienced in their lives. And so a strong 62% majority of them are supportive of getting these types of messages from sports properties. A quarter of them are not as supportive. But overall, I think you're seeing that there is a platform here for people who are comfortable with the content, comfortable with the people who that they root for, and they really want to understand their backgrounds and understand their reality, and the social issues that they track and they follow and they support. So this is just a quick way of getting you through the data. Obviously, the opportunity to get to normalcy was important for sports, for people who follow it. There's a comfort level to try new technology to engage as a fan. And there's an interesting opportunity here to be able to put that technology in their hand, and also the opportunity to understand where athletes are coming from and racial equality issues that companies and brands are delivering through sports. Really, there is an openness to it that's not really present among non-fans. So given that, let me turn it back to you, Ray, but that's a quick way to walk you through and understand where America is overall with this pandemic, and also what the positive role sports can play in getting back to a normal.
Thank you, Jay. And maybe great data, and we know you and the Harris poll and Stagwell have been tracking this each week. Maybe I'll start the panel discussion with you. As you think about the research, kind of two parts to the question, what was most surprising, or what is most surprising in the data? And then to you as a researcher and a sports fan, what gives you the most optimism as you think about these data?
Yeah, I think what's interesting, I think there's a desire in the way, and I think it's not surprising, but then in some ways it makes sense, is that there's really a desire to engage in new ways beyond just showing up or just watching it on TV. And technology really is helping drive that forward. And I think, in a way that people are not going to the grocery store and using, e-commerce or Amazon, there's a way to be able to engage with technology in a cost-effective way for people from home that does bring that normality that they're looking for. And I think the technology element of this is really fairly interesting. And I think sports brands like esports are really experiencing an upsurge because they were able to fill that void for a period of time when there was no sports. And so that tells you the people who truly want to experience any sports, they'll take anything. They'll take whatever they can get, whether it's esports or anything else. The power to technology and be able to be and augment your reality as a television, as a sports fan at home, is an inflection point that we've never experienced. And the pandemic has really brought that in a new way that never would have on its own.
Got it. And John, what about you? I know you really have poured over the research and the data. How has it shaped or reshaped the work you do with your clients and your decision-making about sports engagement overall?
Well, I think obviously there's been a shift from thinking about tailgating and being at the stadium to now it's all about home gating, right? And it's about, huddling up with, people that are healthy or safe, or however you want to look at it. I think that, a lot of our clients, trusted brands is a big piece, because I think during this period, to Jay's point, and a lot of the research is, people were caught off guard by this thing. They were blindsided. They were like, what? We have to stay away from everybody, and we have to go through these 2-week, quarantine scenarios before we can then see somebody we know. And so, there was a lot of the uncertainty, and people are looking for, terra firma. They're looking for, trust. And I think trusted brands, obviously, like Frito-Lay, all of the great salty snack products that we had another client, quite frankly, that had been struggling previously, but the Campbell Soup had one of the greatest periods, in the past many years during this period. So I think, shifting that mindset from being there to being home to being within your bubble, and then again, reigniting the trust factor in brands, was probably another area.
Got it. Well, speaking of brands, Marissa, as we talk about some of the data, you see some growth opportunities. You see a little bit of ebbs and flows on the traditional sports and the viewership, but they're, not huge growth, but there is growth, particularly NBA and esports. From a marketer standpoint and a brand standpoint, what do you do with that, and how have you been engaging differently?
Yeah, I'll first say, I think, we see a lot of challenge in the pandemic, but I think there's just tremendous opportunity to be innovative and to think of new ways of engaging. And just, to answer a little bit of your question, esports, right? You talked about the growth of esports because people are just wanting to engage in different ways. And for brands like ours, especially a brand like Doritos, where we want to engage Gen Z and kind of that younger audience, esports has played a tremendous role. And we've been very deliberate this year, not only to focus on, we're not focusing on the competitive side of, professional esports. What we're doing is focusing on the culture building side. So we're partnering a lot with the streamers that create communities and real engagement. So you think about things like, we partner with big things like Call of Duty, but we also, we created a series called the Doritos Disruptor series. And it's meant to support these streamers that are creating these competitive environments. So it's done through Twitch and Twitch Rivals. There's 10 events throughout 2020. And again, it's just brought so much engagement from this Gen Z audience like we've never seen before. And there's just new ways to engage. I think another example, we can't be in the stadiums, we can't engage with the game as we used to, but I think there's a real opportunity to engage personally with the players and to see them in a new light. And we have a partnership with the Players Tribune and Tostitos. And the Players Tribune is a platform that brings some of those personal conversations to life, with professional athletes. And we get to go to their homes and interact with them. We just worked with Reggie Bush, went to his home, cooked with Tostitos, created some recipes. And I think the audience gets to see this new content, giving them ideas to homegate, but also engaging in a much more personal way with the players. And I think that's really important in this time, to get to know a different side of them, right? Not just, the touchdowns there or the runs they're making in the field, but how they're engaging at home during this time. I think it's very important.
Got it. Well, let's expand a little bit on Gen Z and the millennial audience, or the young people today, this next generation, and the future of sports. There's an open question out there: is, the traditional leagues, are the young people gravitating or not to the traditional sports that we've all grown up with? And what does the future hold between this relationship between Gen Z and millennials and sports in general? Would open it up to any of you. What's your point of view on this marriage? John?
Well, I can jump in. I guess, the challenge for some of the older, let's say traditional stick and ball team sports is they've been around for 100 years or 125 years. Okay. And how much have they changed either, the structure of the sport, speeding up action, right? Things that millennials, Gen Z, they have they want, information, data in real time and quick hits. And so whether it's speeding up the action to make it more attractive, or whether it's the in-venue experience, millennials and Gen Z, they like to be social. They like to interact with their friends. They like to, they don't want to be restricted or confined to, I'm sitting in this seat and I'm not getting up. And if I do get up, it's going to be an inconvenience to the person sitting next to me because I'm in this linear row. And so I think those are two of the biggest challenges for, traditional sports league. So you see more of, experiential spaces. I think if you watch the Monday Night Football game, Baltimore, the Ravens have done a great job of with their partnership with Bud Light and Anheuser-Busch. They have the Bud Light Touchdown Club in the end zone. And, that would be a very popular place for young people to gather, to be sociable, to drink Bud Light seltzer, to, enjoy Frito-Lay products and brands. And so, but it's not just, in the row. So I think, adapting the venues to make them more millennial friendly. I think looking at the sport and the structure of the sport without changing it drastically, but how do you make it more relevant? And then you look at things like esports. I mean, they were born out of that generation, right? I mean, and so action sports, were born out of a younger generation and created for that generation by that generation. So they're obviously going to have a natural connectivity. But I would say it's for the older 100-year plus leagues and sports, it's all about how to make it more relevant to that consumer, that fan.
Yeah, and I would just add, especially with Gen Z, right? That the main target of a lot of our brands, particularly Doritos, it is definitely about being relevant. It is about the action, but it's also very personal. This generation wants to express themselves. They want to do so in a more engaging and personal way. And so finding a way to really personalize the game is going to be key. And you can't necessarily do that out in the field, right? But you can do certain things to gamify the experience, maybe to bring to life the backstories of the players going in, making it a little bit more engaging. There's a lot of different ways, and we're doing a lot of that as we partner, partners like Genesco, as we're looking to find new ways, and as we partner with the teams. Because this generation is looking for more than just the action, right, that's on the field. They're looking for all the things around it as well.
Yeah, I think Marissa brings up a great point in terms of the players and the connectivity between millennials and Gen Z and these players. I think you'll see that, I mean, they all know and love, a kid named Ninja, right? Tyler Blevins. And my kids know, who he is, and he's as bigger a celebrity than, Joe Namath, or I don't know, pick somebody from my generation. But, I think the leagues that have done the best job in terms of social media, you look at the NBA, and I think, where they've really done a great job is, all of the social media, whether it's, LeBron James or Zion Williamson or any of these players. I mean, they have this direct connection, and a lot of the other sports. I mean, I think you won't find more quality human beings and individuals than NHL players. I know a lot of hockey players. They're great fathers, husbands. Same with baseball, but I know it's frustrating, sometimes to the commissioners, and it's just not Mike Trout's DNA or maybe Clayton Kershaw's DNA to go out there and do a lot of social media. But I think that's probably the third, as Marissa says. I mean, we're all attracted to, stars and celebrities, but it's the human connection. And if we don't feel like we have that, then those sports or leagues are going to lack.
Got it. Let's talk about engagement and activation. And throughout decades, sports has always been the great unifier, whether it's in a community that's had a trauma or an issue, or whether it's our country or frankly the world. Sports has always brought us together. As we think about 2020 and everything that has happened to us as a society and a population, what's your view of the role sports is playing today, even in a virtual world, about being that great unifier? And I'd open it up to all, and maybe John, Jay, and then Marissa.
Well, I think obviously sports is the and especially team sport is the ultimate cooperation, communication, if you will, and there are no black, white, brown. There's no difference, right? Everybody's wearing the exact same jersey color or uniform or logo. So I think it's the ultimate microcosm for, a great society, if you will. You show me a team that has the best locker room chemistry, and I'll show you a championship team. And I think that, the poll that the slide that Jay had, I think illustrates it well. Avid or sports fans understand that, there's no place for racism or, those types of mindset. So for them to be more accepting of, let's say, the sports leagues doing things around social justice initiatives or issues and communicating that is much more, I don't want to say tolerable, it's just more right? I mean, they understand that. People that are not sports fans, to Jay's slide, they were a little more polarized, right? And they don't understand that. And, I think with the absence of sports, we were looking for communal, common, we're all in this together, right? And there's nothing greater than, a bunch of completely different people coming from the most diverse backgrounds coming together with one cause and succeeding. I mean, it's the great American story, right? And I think now the problem's been with the absence of sports. What were you watching? We were watching, instead of 6 different sports events, I'm watching 6 different networks, and it didn't matter if, I had 3 that were hard left and I had 3 that were hard right. I mean, it was just constant angst and fighting and bitterness and anger. And I think people are just weary of that. And, I think that's why people were looking for sports, because now I'm part of that community. I'm part of the Longhorn Nation, or I'm connected to people. So, I was glad to see the data that Stagwell and Harris Poll did, and I think it's in a lot of ways it's common sense. But
Jay, what's your view?
Yeah, I would just I'd reinforce what John's saying. I think what people have loved about sports is that there's and this is a little bit, obviously this has changed a lot in politics, but for sports this has always been about values and overcoming. Athletes are on the field representing a lot of my values. They overcome adversity. They show courage. They work with their team. And they train and they're dedicated, and they're hardworking. Our country's hardworking. And, all of that during the pandemic was sort of stripped away, being able to see those values in motion on TV, or even to see the highlights on ESPN. And, whether you like LeBron or you don't like LeBron, you can't doubt the fact he doesn't work hard. You can't doubt the fact that he's not a leader. You can't doubt the fact that he's not the best, in his sport. You can't doubt the fact that he doesn't want to be a winner and overcome. And I think that's what the absence of that was really sort of demoralizing to people. And even if you're not a Lakers fan, or I'm a Cavs fan when he played for Cleveland, but the fact that he was able to, and I'm from Ohio, so the fact my first sports memory was, Ernest Biner dropping the ball going into the end zone in the 1980s. I think it was the first time I saw my dad truly upset. That's a value of, like, we were Browns fans and we stuck with it, and we dealt with the highs and we dealt with the lows, and it was really challenging to be a Browns fan. But and then we were also a Cavs fan too. But the fact that we waited 50 years and that night was great. And so I think the fact that these values, for a period of time that we weren't, and these values are all things that we all share. And the fact that it was sort of absent for a long period of time in our world, if you're a sports fan, 3 months in sports is a long time. And the same thing for people who live in Washington for the Nationals, when we thought we were terrible at 19-31 or 19-32, but that team worked. And I think those values were really on display. And I think that's really what sports is about at the end of the day, is really sharing the values of watching every day these people work hard. And even though I don't have the same skill set they do, I think that absence of that was really a struggle for a lot of us who really love sports. Marissa, I see you're shaking your head.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with both of you. And I think to your question, Ray, sports now is more important than ever to engage and to bring us together. It's a reflection of our humanity, right? I mean, Jay and John talked about, it's the passion for your team and and coming together. And, I think of my Saturday mornings throughout my entire life filled with the sounds of soccer and the songs. And, it's just something that is so special, and the world needs it now more than ever. And I'll tell you, at PepsiCo, we aren't necessarily in the business of selling, chips and drinks. Like, we're in the business of creating smiles. And my job is to create moments of joy every day. And sports play such a critical part in generating smiles and joy. I mean, you saw how John and Jay just lit up as they were talking about, sports and sports coming back. And that is what I think gives me a lot of hope for the future, whether we're in the stadium or not. We've got all these wonderful tools to engage our consumers, bring them that happiness and the joy and the passion that sports brings. So, I have a lot of optimism for the future of sports and how we'll engage.
Let's talk a little bit more about that. As a marketer and as a brand, you've had to find new ways to create those smiles. Tell us about what you've learned and what's been most effective, and what have you learned on the other side as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think I talked a little bit about the new innovative things we're doing, right? Whether it's engaging on social media, through esports, home gating. I'll talk about one little fun thing we did, and then the big thing we did. One of just an interesting and fun thing that we did earlier to kick off the season, because people aren't at home at the stadiums, and you kind of miss the sound of the stadium. We actually created Tostitos bags. We partnered with 10 teams, and Genesco, you guys, partnered with us in doing this. And the bags had this special technology where when you tip them over to serve your chips, you could hear the sounds of the stadium and that team's particular cheer, right? So of course I got the Cowboys bag, and, as you tip it over, it says "Touchdown Cowboys," and, you can hear the cheering. And that has brought tremendous joy to our consumers. But, we're still doing the big stuff. We're still going for the big TV, because that's where we get the most awareness, and that's where we get the most eyes. And we knew this year the return of NFL was going to be like no other. I mean, what a moment in culture, right, for NFL to come back, after the pandemic. And we wanted to capture that magic. And, we created the spot. I'm sure everyone's seen it. 'Twas the night before kickoff. And it was just all about that anticipation. I mean, Jay talked about those 3 months or whatever it was where we had no sports. I mean, it was like they gutted your heart, right? And just the anticipation of football coming back. How could we capture that in a really unique way? Thanks to Genesco, we got some of the most amazing players to play along in the spot, and we created this magical story that I think is the story of everybody, whether you're a player, a commentator, a fan, I think everybody could relate. And it's just been so powerful. And I think those are the kinds of stories we want to continue to tell. Again, whether we're live in the stadiums or not, that passion, we got to keep capturing it because it's super special.
Let's talk a little bit about being virtual. Obviously, 2020 has been the story of being digital and virtual. Is there a point at which fans and viewers and people in general just hit the fatigue spot? Or are we far from that? Marissa, maybe, I'd love to hear from everyone, but Marissa, maybe starting with you.
I think you can always get tired, of the virtual thing. We've been doing virtual for, more than 6 months. I think the key is to continue to keep it fresh and engaging. There's so much we can do virtually. We're only tapping the surface on technology, storytelling. And so I think if we continue to be super innovative, very authentic, very relevant, then I don't know that we'll hit the fatigue, right? It's like anything else. If we do the same thing over and over, then we'll hit that fatigue really fast. I think the onus is on us to keep it fresh and keep it motivating and engaging. And that is why our jobs are so important, right? Because we got to keep creating those ideas, whether they're virtually, live, experiential, all of that.
John, what's your view?
Yeah, I mean, I think people are, people are fatigued in terms of isolation or disconnected. I mean, that's why I think people want to, go back to school, see their friends, get the kids back in school. Let's go to dinner. Let's go out to a restaurant. How many people were, freaked out that they couldn't even go out to dinner, to just a restaurant? And Jay and I have a mutual friend that during the pandemic, he's a foodie, kind of a food snob, and he said that he'd love to go to the crummiest restaurant just to be at a restaurant. So I think there is a fatigue. I think we've gone back to our offices, in various locations, and I can tell you, even if somebody comes into my office and they're across my office and they're wearing a mask, and sometimes I tell them, hey, take the mask off, you're 20 feet away from me, but I think just physically being together, that's the foundation, that's the core ingredient in human DNA. So we will always be longing to go back to a stadium, go back to, travel or whatever it is. The fatigue factor, I think, it will be something that I think inevitably sustains us. It's ironic, but I think the fatigue factor, if you will, as tired as we are of Zoom and staying, that's what's going to push us and keep us moving forward to get back to, that community and interaction with other humans.
Jay, any data?
Yeah, no, I mean, just quickly, I was smiling about Marissa's example about the Tostitos bag that gives off sounds when you open it, because I mean that's the sort of thing that people are really looking for. It's like it's simple and it's easy and it brings a smile. I think it has to be both, because I think when you look at Zoom School that John was talking about, Zoom School, it's relatively easy. My third grader, he's able to get on Zoom, but like, after 3 hours, it's like, we're really struggling with it. And so it's not bringing joy. Okay. He can do it, but it doesn't bring a lot of joy, and he's good with it for the first hour or two. And so I think we really need to make sure that technology, when it comes to fan engagement, it has to be easy and it has to bring joy and it has to really bring the experience that people are really wanting. And I think Zoom in the beginning, it continues, and we're on these webinars. We probably have done more webinars and Zooms than we even know what we do with. And I think the ease and the convenience is obviously critical and obviously important given the pandemic that we're in. And obviously just for our own health purposes, it's something that we have to be doing. But I think the fact that if the technology is difficult and clunky, it's not going to get acceptance. I think Zoom's got acceptance because it's easy and you get a decent experience. But over time, it's not going to continue to give that the positivity that that the bag, when it says "Go Cowboys" and anything else that comes that brings a smile. And I think that's really, if we've learned anything in the last 3 months, is it has to be easy, but it has to bring the smile. It has to bring that fulfillment and positivity that people want. After people have now realized it has the opportunity to go away, because no one ever really thought that like baseball was never going to start on opening day. It was always just going to happen. Now all of a sudden it's not happening. So I think that's a critical component to this, is just easy and also bring the smile and bring the fulfillment that people really now value and treasure more than they have in the past.
Thanks, Jay. Let's talk about, we started the year with 3 months of no sports. Now the pendulum has swung. We have a fall that is chock full of sports. We have NFL and Masters, NASCAR, NBA, and we're seeing viewership as a result ebb and flow. What's our view on this catch-up phase we're in this season, this fall season? Is it too much? Can fans manage it? And how do you all, in your various roles, manage this plethora of sports after having gone so long without? Marissa, maybe start with you.
It's been a whirlwind and lots of learnings. I think we of course didn't anticipate there to be, what is it, 4 major sports at the same time, 5 major sports at the same time? I can't even count. And so some of our traditional things like, NFL, we're seeing a little bit of the viewership come down. I will say, as a marketer, we want to make sure we continue the stories that we tell and continue to the platforms that we've had that have worked. I think we are in a catch-up phase, and so we're probably going to see a little bit of a difference. But, our partnership with the NFL, I mean, we've had that partnership for, longer than 10 years. It's been an incredible partnership. I think as we go and as they learn and they evolve, we will evolve. So I will continue to bet on those partnerships because they've worked for us, right? But I also think I'll take probably this next couple of months to see it all come through, to give us a little bit of learnings to what we were discussing earlier. What sticks, what doesn't stick, where do we need to adjust? The big rocks, though, I think will remain because they're proven for us, and I don't think the pandemic is going to bring them down. So,
got it. John, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, listen, October has always been my favorite month of the year. I mean, for a lot of reasons, okay? First of all, if you live in North Texas, there's about 6 weeks in the fall that our weather is better than California. Our weather is better than anyone on the planet, okay? So, that coupled with the fact that you've got pro football and college football and MLB playoffs and World Series and now, as you said, you've got things like the Masters, in November, and you've got, all these other sports on top of it. So it has impacted the ratings, I think, for the next, 4 or 5 weeks. Well, I thought for sure that the presidential debates were gonna dominate the ratings, but after last night, I'm not so sure people are going to tune back into horror shows. So somebody, they're going to have to figure out the Presidential Debate Commission is going to have like a zapper, on these guys, or a shock collar. But I think that, to Marissa's point, the your blue chip stocks, your strong sports are going to withstand any of this, and they're going to be there in the long run. I think it is an opportunity for some of these new sports to, I don't want to say take advantage, but, get their, shot at connecting an audience. And for us, it's really just about ROI. So I don't, there's certain leagues that are very expensive, but I can look at things like the ACL, the American Cornhole League, right? So you see that on ESPN, and if that helps me sell, differentiate my client's brand from their competitors, and helps me sell their products, then I'm a huge Cornhole League advocate. But I do think we'll come out of this. I mean, people went back to traveling after 9/11, even though they were nervous. I know the airlines are working on something, Ray. Now, American Airlines is obviously a longtime client of ours, and I certainly know a lot of the other airline folks and competitors. But working on something like testing, on-site testing at the airports. So just like you were confident if you went through that metal detector that there weren't anybody on the other side with box cutters or anything, that could harm you. I think now, as they do on-site testing at airports, and people understand the true benefit of those HEPA filters on planes, and that it is safe to travel, they're going to travel more. I think the same for stadiums. I'd like to see, if I told you that, there's going to be 15,000 people in a basketball arena. But Ray, let me tell you something. All 15,000 are safe. They're healthy. They don't have any colds or viruses. You would go in a heartbeat. And so I think, we've got to reestablish that that confidence, that comfort level, whether it's a vaccine or a proven, antiviral medication or treatment. I mean, we're gonna get back to a new normal. Maybe that normal includes hand sanitizers at every seat, where you get a care pod instead of the pom-poms and the bangers, give out some hand sanitizers as the game day gift. But we'll get back there.
Got it. Let's turn to a very serious topic and an important topic of social justice. And Marissa, I'm going to ask you to lead on this one because Pepsi is no newcomer to this topic of equality. What's changed in 2020? We talked earlier in the data about the propensity of sports fans to have different values or to be early adopters, to not tolerating a lack of values. But you're just thinking about this year versus last year and just a couple of years ago, even with the Kaepernick issue, what's changed in 2020 that has made social justice so sticky and here to stay from your standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you, we've always at PepsiCo been committed to diversity, inclusion, equality. I think what's changed is, the prevalence of the topic, right? It is front and center. And for us, it just means accelerating the agenda. So from a PepsiCo perspective, since we've always been committed to it, but now we want to elevate it and accelerate it. And, inclusion, equality, just equal opportunity for all is a key thing in everything we do, whether it's, recruiting, retaining our diverse associates, to how we engage with, our agencies, how we engage with our sports teams. Like, we want to make sure that journey, again, is front and center and elevated. And the things that we've done recently, we've had some very visual, very vocal, very measurable commitments that we have been very public about. We recently made a very public announcement about $400 million commitment, to the Black community, and that takes place in various forms. And that's a commitment that I think is going to continue, whether it's in sports or in anything else that we do as a company.
Got it. We have just a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to go into lightning round mode, and I'm going to ask each of you to look in your crystal ball. And as you think about sports from now until the end of the year and into 2021, just briefly, and we'll do Jay, John, and Marissa, give us your prediction. The end of the year is going to be full of predictions about the coming year. Give us your top prediction about sports, why they matter, and why they will be the great unifier in 2021. Jay, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I would just say, I think, just to go back to some of the points I've made, I think it's sports, despite all of the things around polarization or whatever people feel about certain issues and how athletes are taking them on or leagues are taking them on, or whether it's right or not to do that. I think the league and the sport and the teams that can continue to drive these universal values that we talked about, that people really love about sports and athletes, the people that can do that are the ones that are going to continue to win, because I think sports should be a unifier. And I think what we've seen, in a little bit in response to your question you asked, Marissa, what we've seen is sort of, in some ways, the lack of our government to be able to address a lot of these systemic issues has seeped into corporate America. And corporate America's role in sports has sort of driven the leagues and everybody else to get this with the help of the athletes who are every day dealing with these issues. But to the extent that everyone can get and continue to drive these fundamental values of, that people root for in their teams, that we can continue to drive, that is going to be the most successful, even when there's a big shakeup that there is right now and viewing habits can change. But to the extent that you can still appeal to those universal values of bravery and courage and overcoming adversity and being that unifying force to be able to continue to do that, is going to really continue to pay dividends at times and when there's a lot of polarization in other elements of our society. And I think that's really critical.
Great. John, looking into your crystal ball, lightning round, quick. What's your top prediction for 2021?
All right, quick. Here's my big hope, I guess, is that we can go from 20 to 21 and we can move forward after the election and that these athletes, that we can truly mobilize some sort of change. You know, I would gather all the NFL players. I know how popular they are on Capitol Hill, and I would get them up to DC, and then let's talk about after the season, you know, what are the changes? And I think that sports will lead that. It led, you know, racial barriers with Jackie Robinson and others. And I think it can, once again, to Jay's point, unify the country around the entertainment component. But I think in 2021, these athletes, after their seasons, they have to have a concerted effort to go tell these politicians, this is what we should do. This is how we can make it better.
Fantastic. Marissa, prediction
So
for
mine's a little muddy, but I can tell you this: sports will always, no matter what form it takes, will be a critical part of our lives. Will be the unifier. Will be, you know, the reflection of our humanity, and therefore we need to elevate sports. And we're going to have to be more innovative to capture the new younger consumers, to be able to talk about these issues of social injustice, to be able to bring to life, you know, the challenges of a post-COVID world. Like, all of these things we need to work on. But the one thing I know is sports will be here now and ever and forever, you know, a reflection of our joy and our happiness. And it's our job as marketers or as agencies or even as pollsters to elevate sports in our society.
There you heard it. Thank you so much, Marissa, Jay, John. Great insights. Thank you to Genesco, the Harris Poll, Stagwell, Frito-Lay. Thank you all for these insights. Thank you all for what you do to elevate the game and to unify our country. That's our webinar for today. Thank you for joining.
Ray.
Thanks, Ray.
Thank you, guys.
Everybody.